Hello and welcome to this introductory video on user access and security in GBMS. Let's log into GBMS and see how user access and security is managed. Logging into GBMS requires a username and a password that can be created within the GBMS program. However, GBMS also supports using your Active Directory to allow users to log into GBMS using their domain login, so you can easily manage users who go on leave or who leave the company permanently. GBMS also has multi-language support. Here we'll log in using a local GBMS login. In GBMS, we can set up each user to not only limit their access to different parts of the program, but we can also limit or turn off menus and submenus that the user is not using and does not need to have visible. To easily manage your users, GBMS uses roles that represent the jobs in your organization and then assigns access rights or privileges to these roles so that you only need to manage the roles you create for your organization rather than manage each individual user's privileges. Before we look at user security, let's look at how roles are created and used in GBMS. Roles are intended to represent the job types in your organization, so the roles we will create are user-defined and should simply reflect the employee roles in your company. Common roles are sales associates, sales managers, purchasing managers, customer service reps, and many other job descriptions that represent the types of jobs that the people in your organization fill. GBMS offers some generic sample roles that can be used, edited, or removed so that you can easily create the roles that represent your company. Once you create all your roles, you then add the privileges to those roles that will allow a user to access only those areas of the application that a person performing the role should have access to. So for example, if we select the warehouse operator role, we see down below that it only has access to privileges limited to working in the warehouse. This means that any user who is assigned this role will only be able to access menu items like picking, put away, receiving, and shipping in GBMS. To add or remove privileges, we select the privileges we want to add or remove and then use the arrow controls to move them. Here we can remove the inventory adjustments privilege by clicking on it and then clicking on the single arrow button to move it to the list of privileges that this role does not have. This privilege has now been removed. If we look to the right of the list of privileges, we see a tree of the menu items in GBMS. Only the menu items that are checked are menu items that will be visible for users assigned to this role. Here we see that for the warehouse operator role, only the fulfillment processing menu items such as receiving, put away, picking, shipments, and inventory will be visible to any user assigned to this role. If we assign this role to a user, he or she will only have access to the warehouse functions and will not even see the other modules of GBMS on his or her menu when they log into GBMS. To assign a user to a role, we simply click on the user's name and use the arrow controls to move the user. Let's assign John Smith to the warehouse operator role. We click on his name and click on the arrow button to move him over to the section that says users assigned with this role. After our roles are created, we can next set up our user accounts. The minimum requirement to create and save a user is to enter a username, a password, and a full name. We can then add optional pieces of information to the user account, such as their email address, phone number, a specific customer or vendor they're assigned to, their employee ID, and their manager. If we have linked GBMS to your Active Directory, we can check the domain account option, and the user will use their domain account to log into GBMS. When a domain account is used, the account username must match the domain login name. If this user enters or approves sales orders or purchase orders, we can set approval limits for each so that if the user tries to approve a sales order or purchase order over their limit, they will receive a message informing them that the amount is over their approval limit and will prevent them from approving the order. The Approve By option allows us to designate the person who will need to approve the sales orders and purchase orders that the user is not allowed to approve. This person can be set up with an alert that will let them know that they need to approve an order. Each user also needs to be assigned to a default printer in order to view and print documents and reports. This printer can be changed when a report or document is printed so that the user can print to any document they have access to. Each user can also be set up to have a custom home page that will display important tasks, alerts, or other types of information for the user. My home page is currently set up to show my tasks for the user, which will display all GBMS related tasks that I have been assigned to complete. If this user is responsible for signing documents such as purchase orders or requisitions, we can save a scan of their signature and use it on documents that require their signature. If we click on User Geneva, we can see such a scan. Now let's take a look at some of the important security features that GBMS supports. The Filters tab allows us to control what users can view when using certain filter search components such as the ones listed below. If a user's responsibilities only extend to, say, one warehouse, we can select that warehouse so that it will pre-populate all searches for this user. So that way the user is only limited to viewing just the data in that one warehouse. If we do not want the user to be able to select another warehouse, we can uncheck the Allow Change Options checkbox so they cannot select another warehouse. Another useful example is to pre-populate the user's name so the user can only look at the documents that they entered and not any documents that other users entered if we uncheck the Allow Change option. The Roles tab offers some of the same functionality as the roles form we viewed earlier. We can unassign and assign roles from either form, and both forms will be updated so we are viewing the same information. The Privileges tab allows us to assign privileges to a user. Generally, it is always recommended that we assign privileges to roles and then assign each user to one or more roles. However, you can choose to not even use roles and instead just assign privileges to each user instead. Typically, users will be assigned to one or more roles, and then they may be assigned to one or more additional privileges in case they need permanent or temporary access to a program module or function. The Other tab in GBMS will generally allow us to add up to 10 custom fields for data that GBMS does not currently have. Custom fields can be either a text field where the user can enter any alphanumeric characters, or a drop-down list you can create in order to limit the choice of the responses that the user may select. In this example, we have a PIN number field to enter a user's PIN number, and a yes-no drop-down list to answer a question about the user's background. When we need to update our users, we can go to the Options tab to change their password or rename either their username or full name. We can also take this user and use them as a template to create a new user with a different username and full name. After the new user is created from the copy, we can then update some of the information on the account, but not have to enter all the same information again. Lastly, the Menu option allows us to make menus available to users on individual basis. Just like with privileges, it is always recommended that we assign menus to roles and then assign each user to one or more roles. However, you can choose to not use roles and instead assign menus to each user instead. Typically, users will be assigned to one or more roles, and then they may be also allowed to have access to one or more menus in case they need permanent or temporary access to a program module or function. Currently, we are logged in as the Geneva user who has full access to all menu items and has privileges to access every part of the GBMS program. So if we click on the different main modules, we see all the submenus, for each of these main modules. Let's now log in as our warehouse operator who has limited access to see what a user with restricted access will see and be able to do. Now our access is limited to just the warehouse functions we defined for the warehouse operator role. If we go to the different main menus, you notice that we cannot see anything under front office. We can see under fulfillment processing, receiving, put away, picking, shipments, and inventory, which is what we set up for our operator role, warehouse operator role. We cannot see anything under manufacturing, attendance and labor, or any other main modules here. Although this user cannot access things like sales orders and purchase orders, however, as you will see in introductory videos about warehouse functions such as receiving, picking, and shipping, the user will see all the information they need from these documents in the screens that they do have access to. This concludes our introductory video on user access and security in GBMS. Thanks for watching, and please watch our other videos that introduce more of the important features of GBMS, and then be sure to contact Geneva Systems to schedule a live demonstration of GBMS.